Discover the incredible truth. Is Earth an amazing test of humanity's hidden strengths? Revealed. Jake squinted as raindrops pelted the attic window, a symphony of despair echoing through the small space. Sifting through the remnants of a life on pause, he yearned for the day he could break free from the shackles of his family's sawmill. The claws of obligation dug deep, gnawing at the heart of his ambitions, a memorial to a time when dreams danced on the edge of possibility. His grandfather's dusty journal, unearthed from beneath forgotten memories, flickered with the hope of rejuvenation, concepts of sustainable practices that could elevate their crumbling mill and even breathe life into their desolate Appalachian town. But would his father's resolute belief in hard labor dismiss any radical ideas he dared to acknowledge? As he flipped through the pages, Jake felt the weight of his father's expectations creep into his mind. A swirl of emotions tightened around his throat. It was loyalty versus desire. Could he betray family values for a fleeting chase of his childhood dreams? Doubts pulsed with each heartbeat. Above the relentless rain, the question echoed in his mind. What if he failed? The townspeople seemed to thrive on their pessimism, steadfast in their disdain for anything outside their grit. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A cold shiver slithered down his spine. The townsfolk would respect only what was tried and true, nothing aspirational. But what if his grandfather's ideas held unrecognized potential? Jake wrestled with despair, the specter of failure looming larger with every passing second. He longed for validation but felt angst bubble within him. Would pursuing a dream lead to alienation? Disappointing his family wrapped around him like a noose. He could almost feel its chafing grip tightening. Just as doubts threatened to consume him, he met Nora, an artist marred by her own struggles. Her quiet strength pierced through the fog of his uncertainty. With heartbreak painted across her canvases, she saw the brightness within him that even he struggles to recognize. Under her mentorship, he began to reshape every setback into fertile ground for his aspirations. Yet, with every glimmer of hope, the familiar chains of his heritage tightened. Whispers of ridicule followed him like shadows. A rival from his past, now a corporate strategist, emerged from the past with a hunger to undermine him. As Jake leaned into his experiments, excitement twisted with dread. A pivotal community meeting lay ahead, and tensions brewed. Would he break free or shatter under pressure? Anxiety tightened his muscles, breath quickening. The world felt poised on a knife's edge, vibrating with unspoken words. Moments stretched painfully long as he experienced the internal war between loyalty to family and the lure of his own identity. The air thickened around him. He could almost hear the murmurs of doubt that painted his reality. With the town watching, Jake stood on the precipice of decision. What if he chose the path less traveled? Would that choice heal or hurt? As dark clouds loomed overhead, infiltrating every crevice of his thoughts, he stood ready to face a truth that could irreversibly alter the course of his life. The dampness of the attic permeated Jake's thoughts as he prepared for the meeting. Each thud of his heart echoed in his ears, the weight of expectations pressing down like the storm clouds outside. He felt a surge of determination, although entwined with doubt. The journal lay open beside him, words of resilience glowing from the yellowed pages. Sustainability, innovation, a transformed legacy. Could these ideas ever become his reality? Jake inhaled deeply, centering himself. Moments earlier, Nora had urged him to tell his story with conviction, to weave his aspirations into a narrative that would resonate with those who only knew the sawmill as a relic of the past. "You have a fire within you, Jake," she had said. "Let it blaze so others may see." But even her encouragement seemed to shimmer under the scrutiny of his internal critics. Every familiar face in the town meeting would carry expectations sculpted by years of normative tradition. Would they listen? Would they snicker? Could he bear the thought of being ridiculed for dreams they deemed foolish? As he dressed in his best flannel, a nod to his roots, yet a trade-off for progress, Jake deliberated on the dual identity he was trying to reconcile. The worker his father had groomed him to be, or the innovator that pulsed in his veins. As he drove to the venue, the tempest outside mirrored the turmoil within him. The raindrops struck his windshield like the arguments bubbling in his mind. Picturing his father's furrowed brow as he spoke of traditions made Jake sweat. But imagining a community rejuvenated by new ideas sent exhilarating shivers down his spine. Upon arriving, Jake noticed the gathering of townsfolk, their expressions calculating, eyes shrewd and scrutinizing. Murmurs filled the room as he stepped inside, the atmosphere thick with skepticism. The familiar faces glanced his way, conditioned by years to dismiss anything that threatened their ordinary lives. This was the moment he had to seize, yet it loomed like an immovable mountain, clawing at his resolve. A moment of silence settled as he approached the podium. Maybe all he needed was a chance, a single audience to transform his narrative. He swallowed hard, scanning the crowd for signs of acceptance, clenching the edges of the podium. When he began to speak, he felt the tremor in his voice echoing his insecurity. What if, he ventured, we turned our family sawmill into a model of sustainability? Each word risked sending ripples of disbelief through the room. Imagine cutting-edge tools to harness renewable energy, not only saving our legacy but lifting our whole town. Despite his fraying courage, a few nods emerged from the audience, seeping into the walls of doubt he rebuilt. And then the voice of his rival sliced through the air, a smirk plastered across his face. Do you honestly believe this fairy tale can reshape reality, Jake? You think ideas can replace our hard work? It's naive. That challenge ignited something primal in Jake. Rather than recoil, a rush of adrenaline surged through him. Instead of shrinking back into the shadows of familial obligation, he steadied his gaze, grateful for the romance of the struggle. You're right, it's not just about ideas. It's about the courage to act upon them. A wave of incredulity washed over the crowd. In this moment, he wasn't merely defending a vision. He was standing in his truth. As murmurs erupted, Jake realized he had stepped beyond the threshold of expectation. He was not merely appealing for acceptance, but sparking a pivotal change in his identity. Would his words resonate or crumble? The weight of consequence felt monumental, yet invigorating. He backed up and shifted his stance, feeling the shift within himself. In that potent space between doubt and conviction, he offered a final plea. If we want to thrive, growth and not just survival must be our collective desire. What if we fail? That's how we learn, and it's time to embrace the possibility of failure for the sake of growth. With each heartbeat, anticipation filled the air, a breath held in unison. Would his challenge catalyze others, or simply ignite scorn? The moment felt fragile, suspended in time. It was an uncharted path that beckoned. What lay ahead remained unknown. Would the community's voices align in resonance with his, or would they retreat into ridicule? Facing the crowd, Jake stood at the threshold of his evolution, as exhilarating as it was terrifying. The junction of transformation had arrived, but at what cost? Silence hung in the air like the calm before a storm. As Jake stood at the podium, he could almost feel the electricity crackling between him and the audience. Each person before him represented a strand of his past, woven with threads of expectation, skepticism, and the weight of history. Would his words carry the promise of change, or would they simply echo back disappointment into the void? The murmurs faded as he pressed on, driven by a new surge of determination that pulsed through him like a heartbeat. I know these ideas sound radical, he continued, his voice finding its strength, but we're standing on the precipice of an opportunity, a chance to redefine what this sawmill means for us. This isn't just about machinery and timber. It's about us, our resilience, and our ability to adapt in a changing world. He scanned the room, trying to catch the eyes of those who might share a flicker of hope. There was Miss Landers, her wrinkled hands trembling slightly as she clutched her purse, and old Mr. Thompson, who had always been a staunch critic yet seemed to be leaning forward, curiosity etched into his features. Jake's heart raced with every heartbeat as he pressed on, his fingers digging into the podium for purchase. Imagine transforming the defunct areas of the mill into spaces that promote innovation: solar panels, community workshops, education. Think of jobs that come not from mere survival, but from thriving. The energy shifted temporarily, a palpable tension enveloping the room. A few heads nodded in agreement, their expressions betraying curiosity. Jake realized that he was no longer just presenting an idea, he was igniting a spark. He could see it reflected in a couple of familiar faces, elements of familiarity mixed with a hint of what could be. Then the voice of his rival shot through once more. You think your dreams will replace hard work? This place stands as a testament to our efforts. Nothing comes without sweat. The sharpness of that challenge felt like a blade, and for a moment Jake's resolve dimmed. Had he perhaps overlooked the foundation of effort and tradition? But then he remembered the fire Nora had spoken of, and in that memory he found clarity. Hard work is invaluable. I agree, Jake countered, his voice steadying as he found traction in his convictions. But adaptation is survival. The world is changing around us. We cannot cling to traditions to the detriment of our future. The crowd fell into a contemplative quiet, the tension palpable. Jake realized he was not merely in a battle of ideas, but a profound confrontation of values: what it meant to hold onto legacy versus embracing the evolution of identity. Jake took a breath, one that felt heavier than the last. He was revealing not just his vision but his vulnerability and honest hope that resonated with the essence of who he could become. What if we channeled our strengths into something greater? What if instead of fearing the shift, we embraced it? As we adapt, we don't lose ourselves. Instead, we redefine what we can be together. As the murmurs rose again, this time there were less scoffs and more discussions. His heart soared at the slight shift in the atmosphere. Yet, beneath the exhilaration lay an undeniable truth. This was just the beginning. In that defining moment, Jake recognized that he was no longer that unsure boy struggling for acceptance. He was a catalyst, inviting others to participate in a new narrative, not just his, but theirs too. But he also knew that authenticity carried its own heavy cost. Once exposed, there was no turning back. As the meeting began to heat with discussions both supportive and critical, Jake felt the weight of the churning emotions within him. Each word exchanged held the potential to either uplift or harm his budding dream. Would he find allies amongst the skeptics? Or was the cost of his evolution simply too high for the people steeped in tradition to comprehend? With that uncertainty looming, Jake remained rooted to the spot, poised between the exhilarating promise of transformation and the known limitations of the past. He had taken a leap into the unknown, but the air was thick with unanswered questions. Would the fire he started catch on? Or was it destined to flicker out in the face of adversity? The stakes loomed larger than his ambition, and in that potent moment, Jake was left grappling with the specter of both possibility and potential rejection. A test of his resolve was fast approaching. The discussion swirled around Jake like a tempest, each voice a wave crashing against the rocky shore of his thoughts. As he stepped down from the podium, a sense of disorientation washed over him. The audience that had once felt like a united wall of faces was now a fragmented mosaic, each piece reflecting a different shade of opinion. He could feel the weight of every gaze upon him, like the sun's heat on a skin too long in shade. Jake made his way through the crowd, the staccato of his heart echoing in tandem with the hurried whispers that danced in the air. He spotted Miss Landers, who smiled hesitantly, but her eyes betrayed concern, like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Old Mr. Thompson remained unmoved at the back, arms folded tightly, a stalwart bastion against change. The mingling voices became a cacophony, but amidst it, Jake heard something else. The skepticism morphing into curiosity. It inspired him. Perhaps, just perhaps, the spark he ignited hadn't extinguished, but rather only flickered to life. With his pulse still racing, Jake found himself outside, the crisp air reprieving him from the tension of the hall. He leaned against the cool wooden beam of the sawmill's exterior, seeking solace in the creaking structures that had been a part of his life. There was comfort in the familiarity, but also a reminder of the stagnation that haunted these walls. They had housed dreams that had withered, dust collecting on hopes tucked away for another day. "Jake!" Nora's voice pulled him from his reverie. She was approaching swiftly, her eyes alight with determination. "You did it." The crowd shifted. "They're actually debating your ideas." The reality of her words made his pulse quicken again. This time not from anxiety but from excitement. "Do you really think so?" he questioned, his voice barely above a whisper. Vulnerability, a raw nemesis, lingered just beneath the surface. Nora stepped closer, her stance firm. "You have them thinking. Those who were once silent are now grappling with your vision. But they need more than just ideas, Jake. They need a plan." The gravity of her assertion struck him like a bolt of lightning. Words were indeed powerful, but without a tangible path forward, they risked dissipating into hot air. "You're right," he said, rubbing the back of his neck nervously. "But where do I even start?" Nora's expression softened, a spark of empathy illuminating her features. "How about you start by understanding their fears? Talk to them, listen to their concerns. Show them that their traditions can coexist with innovation." Jake nodded, the wheels of his mind beginning to turn. Adaptation wasn't merely about substitution. It was about integration. He could create a framework that paid homage to the Mill's storied past while pushing it into a promising future. "I could organize a community session," he proposed, the uncertainty in his tone obvious. "A forum where everyone speaks freely, discussing their dream for the mill." Nora smiled, encouragingly squeezing his shoulder. "Yes. Engage them in the dialogue. You'll find there are many who want progress but are afraid of losing what they love. Face those fears and you'll forge a path." Jake felt the fire within him stoke to life once more, yet unease churned in his chest like a gathering storm. Would he truly be able to bridge that gap between tradition and change? His heart echoed with doubts, but the path ahead gleamed with potential. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm, golden hue over the mill, he firmed his resolve. He could refuse the fear that gripped him or let it propel him into action. It was a delicate dance, between determination and the shadows of hesitation, between forging new connections and confronting the ghosts of the past. Stepping away from the sawmill's shadow, Jake turned towards Nora. "I'm gonna pull this off, I have to." Yet, as he began to visualize the challenges ahead, he couldn't shake the feeling that this would be a more personal test than he initially anticipated. He faced not only a community in turmoil but confrontational relationships that lingered close, like Mr. Thompson's penetrating gaze from the back of the room, always watching, waiting. The realization that some battles must be fought against those he once considered allies weighed heavily. Determination surged as he took a step forward into the emerging twilight, his path illuminated by the flickers of uncharted possibilities. Yet something deep within told him the true struggle was just beginning. How would he navigate these tense waters where the familiar morphed into the unknown? The echoes of doubt whispered through his mind as the first stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, leaving Jake with one stark realization. If he hoped to succeed, he needed more than just a plan. He required the courage to face the unknown within himself. With an urgency pulsing in his veins, another chapter was on the horizon, one replete with challenges, some external and others painfully internal. With that thought echoing in the silence around him, he made his way home, ready to prepare for the conflicts set to unfold. The time had come to face not only the market's scrutiny but also the deeper truth lurking in the shadows of his own motivations. The following morning, Jake entered the sawmill's dusty confines with renewed determination, the sunlight casting long shadows that seemed to stretch into the depths of his thoughts. Equipped with only fragments of a plan, he felt an unusual surge of energy propelling him forward. Each creak of the wooden floor echoed like the beat of a drum, urging him to confront what lay ahead. "Today, I plant the seeds," he murmured under his breath, barely aware of the words forming a tangible commitment. He gathered materials for his community forum, envisioning a space where skepticism could bloom into collaborative dialogue. His resolve faltered, however, as doubt crept into his mind. each chaotic thought a weed threatening to choke the burgeoning sprouts of his hope. Before he could spiral too far, he decided to seek insight from those closest to him. He knew he had to confront Mr. Thompson, the very embodiment of tradition and resistance. Still, the thought of engaging the older man left a bitter taste in his mouth. It felt like summoning a ghost from the past to face the present. As Jake approached the back of the mill, he spotted Mr. Thompson inspecting a stack of freshly cut timber. The grooves etched into his weathered hands mirrored the complexities of their shared history. "Mr. Thompson," Jake called out, his voice faltering slightly. The older man turned, an inscrutable expression lining his face. "Jake, come to talk about your grand plans?" The words hung in the air, laced with skepticism. "I'm hoping we can have a dialogue. A community session where everyone can voice their concerns, share their visions of how the mill could evolve," Jake ventured, grappling with the knot tightening in his stomach. "Change is a tricky business," Mr. Thompson replied bluntly. "You'll find people digging in their heels once they see what's at stake." Jake held firm. "But I want to understand, really understand, what it is they fear losing. It's more than just the jobs or the mill. It's the history and the identity." The old man's gaze softened momentarily before hardening again. "Convictions run deep, son. Some fears are buried under layers of pride. You'll need to be prepared for their ridicule and rejection." Jake's heart thudded painfully in his chest, a possible outcome he had only considered in passing. Was he ready for that? "But what if I can show them a way to bridge the old with the new?" he countered, the urgency in his voice rising. A pause ensued, the stark silence only punctuated by the occasional thud of equipment around them. "Show them, Mr. Thompson spoke slowly, each syllable punctuated with weight, carefully considering the direction of their exchange. "You'll need more than good intentions. Wisdom often comes from those refusing to relinquish what they know." Jake nodded, absorbing the man's skepticism as a challenge rather than a setback. He decided to sidestep the potential emotional pitfalls that could spark conflict. "What if we begin mapping out a hybrid model that respects our roots while iterating progress? In time, we could weave these ideas together and form a united front." Mr. Thompson regarded him, a glimmer of intrigue shining through the clouds of his reluctance. "We'll see if you have the spine to follow through." Jake took the elder's words as a silent vow to not only own his ideas but to stand steadfast against the tempest of opposition that would inevitably rise. With his plan crystallizing in his mind, he realized that his own self-doubt was as formidable an opponent as the community he sought to engage. He spent the afternoon drafting an outline for his proposed session, interspersing strategies to address common fears with anecdotes that could resonate. As he concentrated on creating a meaningful dialogue, a revelation struck him. The elements of vulnerability he had shunned were the very ones which could forge connections. The night crept in, draping the sawmill in an inky cloak, and Jake leaned back in his chair, eyes tracing the lines of the paper scattered with careful notes. His heart raced as he grappled with the enormity of his impending mission. Like climbing a mountain, he was unearthing strengths he hadn't realized he'd possessed, even amid the swell of internal chaos. But as the flickering candlelight cast shadows that danced around him, a lingering unease twisted within. Would he be able to confront the criticisms that would undoubtedly surface? At that moment, a decision coalesced in Jake's mind. He would not shy away from the challenge. The time for waiting was over. It was time to take the plunge. With a firm grip on the evening's uncertain pathway ahead, he stepped outside, staring at the starlit sky, a vast reminder of uncharted possibilities. The weight of what lay before him surged into clarity. Forging a future would test not only his resilience but also illuminate shadows he had hidden from. Jake took a deep breath, the night air invigorating his senses, as he sensed another truth rising within one that guided him like a compass. He decrafted a plan, but would it be enough to withstand the storm brewing on the horizon? Determined more than ever, Jake prepared for the inevitable collisions of belief and tradition. The question hung heavily in the air. Could he emerge from this tumult as more than just a voice for change, but as a true leader willing to face the discord within himself? The following morning, Jake woke with a sense of gravity weighing heavily on him. The realization of what he was about to undertake hit him like a winter chill. It was one thing to plan and hypothetically map a course of action. It was another to step into the arena and confront the very people whose identities were tied intricately to the mill. His mind raced as he stood before the mirror, examining the man staring back at him. "You're ready," he whispered, though his reflection seemed skeptical. He fastened his collar with shaky fingers, a symbolic gesture of donning the mantle of a leader, whether he felt prepared for it or not. Stepping into the sawmill felt different now. The air crackled with potential, yet it was laced with whispers of doubt from unseen corners, fears that he had not only imposed upon himself but sensed from others in the community. It was almost as though he could hear the echoes of Mr. Thompson's cautions reminding him of the treacherous path ahead. Jake set up a modest space at the heart of the mill, utilizing old wooden crates and barrels as makeshift seating. Each piece assembled reflected the mill's rugged simplicity, a reminder of their shared history. But Jake sought to counter this by introducing new ideas, fusing the past with the present. As he arranged the chairs, he felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The simple act of preparation was laden with a sense of impending confrontation. He knew some would arrive with crossed arms, hardened by their years of work and skepticism. The risk of rejection tinged every pulse in his veins. Jake took a moment to collect himself, breathing deeply, clearing his mind of distractions. This session was not about him, it was about them, their fears, their values. He needed to stand as a vessel of understanding, even if it meant stripping himself bare to their critiques. He had to embrace vulnerability not just as a lesson, but as a strategy ready to share his own doubts openly. As the hour approached, faces began to filter into the sawmill. The gathering was a mix of young hopefuls and older craftspeople, like colorful threads woven against a backdrop of history. Jake's heart thudded as Mr. Thompson entered. The older man's presence loomed large, a reminder of the weight tradition held. "Good to see you, Jake," Mr. Thompson said, his tone guarded yet not unfriendly. It was ambiguous but felt like a small step, a sliver of respect. "Thank you for coming. I hope we can have an honest dialogue today," Jake replied, attempting to project confidence he didn't wholly feel. He cast a glance over the crowd and recognized familiar faces, all with expressions that ranged from concern to mild curiosity. He opened with a brief statement about the intentions behind this gathering, thanking everyone for their hard work and dedication. Yet, as he made eye contact, he found it increasingly difficult to conceal his anxiety. His body tensed, and words stumbled at the edges of his mouth. "I understand that change is difficult. I want to hear your thoughts, your fears about what may happen next." Suddenly, a hand shot up in the back. It belonged to Angela, a young woman known for her sharp wit. "What gives you the right to decide what's next, Jake? We've watched a lot of people come and go with big ideas that never materialized." Her words landed heavily, reverberating through the space. The laughter and murmurs faded into a daunting silence. Jake swallowed hard, the taste of his vulnerability now real and palpable. "I can't claim to know everything or presume to speak for all of you," he admitted, his voice gaining steadiness through sheer determination. "I'm here to listen and to navigate this together. If I am to take any lead, it would be an inventory of our strengths and acknowledging our fears." Mr. Thompson's furrowed brow was a silent testament to the tension, but Jake pressed on. "What are we really afraid of losing?" The crowd shifted, signaling their unvoiced concerns. Jake felt that both his own resolve and their collective trepidation hung like a pendulum, swinging between hope and fear. An electric anticipation coursed through him as people began to share stories, their voices rising a little louder. Each story was met with nods, and as Jake facilitated this unfolding dialogue, he uncovered layers of shared history and common fears. He was beginning to see that this rawness, the duality of vulnerability and strength, was essential for forging connections, and with every discussion, he found fragments of resilience within himself sprouting anew. But just as the optimism began to build, a deeper unease slithered through Jake's thoughts. What if the pushback from those enforcing tradition was stronger than he anticipated? Were they truly ready to confront the ghosts of their past? The atmosphere thickened as he mentally strategized how to navigate the impending storm he felt brewing, leaving him with a soundless question as he wrapped up the session. Would they be able to cultivate the courage required to propel change amidst the shadows of tradition still lurking thinly veiled, waiting for their next opportunity to strike? Jake's thoughts swirled like the dust motes catching the dim light filtering through the sawmill's windows. The hope that had briefly flickered now seemed overshadowed by trepidation. He could almost feel the weight of the past pressing down, threatening to crush any newfound optimism. As he dismissed the gathering, their murmurings trailed off, and one by one, they drifted back into their usual routines while he remained rooted in place. He leaned against an old beam, the coolness of the wood seeping into his flesh, grounding him, reminding him of the permanence of the space around him. But what about his own permanence? What if he couldn't follow through with the change he had proposed? Had he merely been a fleeting notion, another fleeting figure seeking to make an impression only to fade into the background noise of tradition? When Mr. Thompson approached him, Jake braced himself, ready for the weight of disappointment or resignation. Instead, the older man clasped him on the shoulder, a gesture filled with an unanticipated warmth. "You held your ground well," he said, and for a moment, Jake thought he saw the glimmer of approval in Thompson's eyes. Was it possible? Could he have truthfully planted a seed of faith? "Thank you, Mr. Thompson." Felt daunting. "Daunting but necessary," he replied. "Do you really think they'll follow you?" Jake hesitated, avoiding direct eye contact. "I hope so. They need to see our strengths, not just the shadows," he said, unsure even as he spoke. He would need to dig deeper. This was about much more than leading. It was about discovering what they could be together. "Good luck," Thompson offered with a sincerity that took Jake by surprise before he turned, melding back into the shadows within the mill. Alone now, the tranquility draped in silence began to gnaw at him. He could allow this to echo in his mind the fear of inadequacy, the uncertainty that clouded his vision. It would be so easy to withdraw, but each moment spent in contemplation also revealed a clearer picture of what lay beneath the surface. He pulled out his notebook, the pages already filled with sketches of ideas and notes from the gathering. Flipping through, he reflected on the personal stories shared, the voice of fear mingling with the thread of hope, binding them. They were candid and raw, revealing the lengths to which people would go to protect what they cherished. It was beautiful, but Jake realized that it was not enough to merely listen to those stories. He had to act upon them. He began to draft a new plan, letting the ink spill across the pages, each line etching out an idea for how they could leverage their historical strengths while embracing the changes necessary for survival. His heart raced as he envisioned a session that would encompass not just acknowledgement of fears, but a collaborative approach setting tangible goals together, allowing everyone to invest their thoughts into a shared vision. But as he pressed pen to paper, doubt crept in. Would they truly engage, or would tradition keep them shackled? He slammed the notebook shut in frustration, the noise echoing through the mill. The walls seemed to reverberate, reminding him that progress often came dressed in discomfort. Just as he was about to succumb to despair, a realization sparked within him. He had stumbled upon a hidden competency, the ability to adapt and pivot amidst uncertainty. This was more than just asking for input. It was about facilitating genuine change by empowering them all. He envisioned standing before them again, armed not only with his proposed plans but also with the weight of their combined stories to convey that their fears could serve their progress rather than hinder it. Jake's determination swelled, overshadowing his insecurities. He had to confront the shadows, those remnants of tradition lurking about, hoping to undermine his efforts. It was time to call upon the community's strengths, encouraging each member to take a risk, to step into discomfort alongside him. And with that realization, he felt a shift within himself. Didn't he have to bear the burden alone? Together, they stood a better chance of growing into something remarkable. The road ahead was fraught with twists and turns, but there was clarity in his purpose now, and that was something profoundly powerful. But just as he was ready to step back into the world beyond his thoughts, the door creaked open, and the familiar frame of Angela reappeared, not bothering to mask the skepticism in her gaze. "I still don't understand how you think we'll trust you," she said, her voice leaving no doubt. The moment of truth had come, and Jake felt the weight of her challenge like an anchor, dragging him into the depths of the very conflict he feared. Would he rise to the occasion, or would he falter under the scrutiny? Jake's heart raced as he studied Angela's expression. The challenge hung heavy between them, an invisible tether that rooted him in place. Trust is earned, Angela, he finally managed, forcing steadiness into his voice. I can't expect you to follow blindly. I have to earn that trust through action. And how exactly do you plan to do that? She pressed, her arms crossed defiantly. In that moment, the uncertainty that had plagued him began to crystallize into determination. By including you all in the process, he replied, his confidence swaying like a pendulum in the wind. I want to hear your ideas and concerns. We're all part of this, and together we create the path forward. Her brow furrowed, a mix of skepticism and curiosity flickering in her eyes. You think that will change anything? Just talking? It's a start, he asserted, wondering if he truly believed it himself. If we can share our fears and strengths, then we can address the root of our hesitations. It's about collaboration, ancient roots joined with new branches. Angela's reticence didn't fade, but just then, something shifted in her demeanor. He saw a slight softening, as if his words grasped at the threads of her skepticism. Still, she remained guarded. What makes you think they'll bother to engage? Because change doesn't happen in a vacuum, Jake said, rallying his thoughts into a tight focus. Every one of us has a unique perspective, and using those insights is how we can evolve. He felt the fervor building, a fire igniting within him. For the first time, he could see a vision that was not solely his own but a tapestry woven with the contributions of the people around him. What if they push back? She asked, a hint of anxiety breaking through her armor. What if we're not ready to hear each other? That fear is real, he acknowledged, feeling her fears merge with his. But it's also a strength. If we're willing to confront those discomforts, we can learn what holds us back and find a way to overcome it. A brittle silence enveloped them, but within it, Jake saw a flicker of possibility. He could either play the role of the historically passive figure in the mill or step boldly into uncharted territory. He chose the latter. Will you help me, Angela? He asked, his tone earnest. I need your voice in this. You know these people. They trust you. Her gaze flickered away for a moment, contemplating the weight of his request. Would she engage? Would she allow vulnerability to take root, risking exposure for the sake of growth? Slowly, her posture began to shift. I suppose if you're serious about this, I can be your sounding board. She relented, the wariness in her voice softening. That's a start, he said, eagerness tightening his throat. We can set up a meeting this week, create space to discuss everyone's concerns and thoughts. As Jake proposed the gathering, he felt a new energy radiate from within. The crackle of potential ignited in the corners of his mind. With every word exchanged, he was scaffolding a bridge against the fragility of fear and tradition. But just as he began to plan, a thought nagged at him. What if their conversations exposed divisions he hadn't foreseen? Would the relief of transparency yield the very insecurities he aimed to dissipate? Angela's cautious yet curious stance posed a challenge he hadn't anticipated. Be prepared for resistance, she cautioned, as they both felt the weight of her warning. I will, he asserted, meeting her gaze with newfound resolve. But it will be worth it. We can reach something real. As they cradled their shared resolve, a bead of sweat trickled down Jake's back. The path ahead promised upheaval, but every step drew him closer to a truth he could feel a grasp on. What lay ahead hung tantalizingly in the air, the promise of growth forged by confrontation. Just remember, Angela said, the note of caution creeping back into her tone. Words don't fix everything. We'll need action. Jake nodded, feeling the weight of their conversation settle in his chest. He accepted the invitation to the battlefield without certainty of victory. As he turned to leave, he felt the purpose settle within him like a well-placed stone. He had glimpsed two fundamental truths, the necessity of vulnerability and the strength of collective action. Though the journey stretched before him, Clarity coalesced as he stepped toward the unknown. With another breath of resolve, he considered the implications of what he had just agreed to. The time would come when he had to not only lead but also truly listen, even when listening meant confronting his own fears. And that would require his most profound strength yet. It was then the realization struck him. How would he confront those who chose silence over participation, surrendering to fear instead of embracing cohesion? The thought tremored in his mind, the echo of a burgeoning storm. The night air felt thick with anticipation as Jake leaned against the cold metal railing outside the mill, the flickering fluorescent bulbs overhead creating an unsettling contrast against the deepening darkness. He could see the shadows of the old machinery, their silhouettes a reminder of the weight of history pressing down on him. He twirled a pen in his fingers, contemplating the enormity of the task ahead. After his conversation with Angela, doubt crept in, intertwining itself with his earlier confidence. What if the meeting devolved into an unproductive confrontation, revealing fractures within the group instead of unity? He wanted to spark a conversation, yet was afraid it might ignite old animosities. Some buried issues were better left untouched, he thought, the familiar pang of anxiety clenching around his chest. But another part of him pushed back. This was a chance for change, for growth, and he was determined not to let fear be the guiding force. Taking a deep breath, he embraced the discomfort he was right to feel uneasy. It was a sign that he cared deeply about what was to come. He decided then and there that his next step demanded more than mere words. He needed action that mirrored the commitment he wanted from others. Pulling out his phone, he began typing a message to Angela, outlining his ideas for a more structured meeting. He wanted to propose a framework that encouraged open dialogue while ensuring everyone felt heard and respected. Halfway through crafting the message, he paused and felt the familiar stirrings of doubt. Was a framework too rigid? Would it stifle genuine conversation? The critical voices in his mind rattled around, sowing discord as he wrestled with the balance between guidance and openness. He snapped the phone shut, the decision crystallizing within him. If he could confront his own uncertainties, then perhaps others could too. This would not merely be a meeting. It would be an invitation to explore unknown waters, to dive deeper into the uncharted aspects of their relationships and their shared mission. In the quiet of the night, with the distant hum of the mill grounds barely audible, a new resolve settled over him. He flipped the phone back open and sent the message, heart racing but fueled by purpose. Hours later, at dawn's first light, Jake gathered the group, a nervous energy swirling among familiar faces some had told him no repeatedly over the years. He could feel the weight of their collective history. It was palpable, yet he was unwavering. "Thank you all for coming," he started, noticing a few skeptical glances. "I know our workplace has its burdens and frustrations. Today we won't ignore that. Instead, let us talk about it." Jake clenched his fists, feeling the heat of anxiety and determination. With each participant who spoke, Jake listened intently, absorbing the complaints and fears that emerged. It was as if unearthing a deep, long-buried treasure, the truth behind the long-standing grievances. Every voice, every perspective he encountered, built his understanding of their collective experience, not just the parts he witnessed alone. But the deeper they plunged into the discussion, the more he realized. Not everyone was willing to bear their true thoughts. Silence hung heavily in some corners, and others fidgeted or crossed their arms tighter, distrust etched across their faces. He felt the tension surge within him, battling the urge to retreat into his comfort zone. This was it, the defining moment of his path forward. How could he bridge the gap? Would his newfound resolve be enough to tackle the fear that silenced his colleagues? In that moment, Jake recognized a fundamental truth about leadership. It was as much about illuminating others' strengths as it was about confronting the discomfort that naturally arose from vulnerability. His heart pounded in resonance with this realization, but he was still teetering on the edge of action and hesitation. "Let us not ignore the fear of speaking up. It matters," Jake said softly, scanning the room. As the air crackled with tension, he couldn't help but wonder. Would this dialogue cultivate strength, or would it expose further divides? As he prepared for the uphill battle of nurturing trust, he braced himself for the conflict of silence that loomed in the shadows. Unbeknownst to him, deep within the void of uncertainty, a revelation stirred. Was it possible that those quiet voices had the most to say? And what if Jake's next test hinged on breaking through that wall of silence? The sun rose slowly, casting a warm glow over the sawmill as Jake stood before the gathered crowd. The mixture of expectation and trepidation clung thickly in the air. He felt profoundly changed since that fateful meeting when he had first dared to dream of transforming his family's legacy. Standing at the intersection of tradition and innovation, he was confronted with the gravity of the choices he had made. Yet today felt different. As he gazed at the familiar faces, the pride, the skepticism, the familiar bonds woven through years of labor, Jake found clarity. He embraced the uncertainty he felt while drawing from the strength of the journey he had undertaken. "Let us start where we left off last time," he said, his voice steady and confident. "I want to hear what's on your minds, whether it's fear, hope, or something in between." The room responded to his newfound urgency. Despite the misgivings, people began to share, hesitantly at first but quickly gaining momentum. Ideas flowed like the timber they processed, raw yet potent. Discussions blossomed, striking chords of commonality, nostalgia, and concern. Jake was elated to witness vulnerability transforming into courage, the delicate threads of tradition being woven into a broader tapestry of potential. Amid the dialogue, he noticed Angela contributing with newfound enthusiasm, her voice rising to defend the pressing need for innovation, as well as respect for the land they worked. "Sure, we've built our lives here, but that doesn't mean we can't embrace new practices. If we remain fixed in our ways, we'll risk becoming obsolete," she proclaimed, her fervor infectious. Jake's heart swelled, recognizing the catalyst he had initiated within her. They were all on this path together, confronting the shadows of doubt as a united front. "Exactly. This isn't just about changing our processes. It's about maximizing what we've always held dear." With each exchange, Jake felt the burdens of expectation lifting. Instead of recoiling from the past, he found strength in it, understanding that growth necessitated confrontation not just with tradition but also with personal insecurities. He had moved from being a passive dreamer to an actionable leader willing to forge the future. His thoughts flickered back to the ache in the roof of the attic, where he wrestled with the weight of familial obligation. In stark contrast, today there was camaraderie. They were creating an opportunity to build consensus, reshaping their collective identity while cherishing their roots. As the meeting drew to a close, Jake presented a rough outline of actionable next steps, which included integrating renewable practices into the sawmill's operations and creating training programs for the community. Momentum surged around the room. They were no longer merely contrasting opinions, but were becoming co-authors of their fate. Nora's dream of an open workshop area for innovation is no longer just a fantasy. "We can make it a reality," Jake declared, and applause erupted, an echo of hope reverberating through the air. People began leaning in, committed to the journey ahead. Mr. Thompson, who had remained mostly silent during the earlier discussions, stood slowly, reflecting the man who had once represented steadfast loyalty to tradition. "I've watched you grow, Jake." His voice rumbled with gravitas. "Earning respect is one thing, but teaching others to embrace change is a greater achievement. If you're willing to lead this, I'd be honored to follow." Jake fought back against the swell of emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. This acknowledgement, a profound validation of his conflict and growth, fortified his identity as a leader. "Then let us do this together," he declared, resolving to not let fear overshadow the dreams they would build. With every passing moment, Jake transformed further. The timid boy bound by expectations had evolved into a recognized innovator among his peers. He embraced the reality firmly displayed before him. He had become not just a voice for change but an architect of their possibilities. As the meeting ended, Jake stepped outside, breathing in the crisp air. The sun's rays glinted off the sawmill, illuminating the shadows that had once clung to him. A sense of achievement coursed through him. He had initiated tangible growth, not just for himself but for a community ready to redefine their narrative. Jake now stood armed with the knowledge that transformation is a journey, one born from courage, clash, and ultimately a resolve for collaboration. It was just the beginning, but he could feel the echo of dreams guiding him forward, a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit. With solid confidence, he had proven not only his competence but his unwavering commitment to a promising future. This is your moment to be part of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending and how you feel about personal transformations in your own life. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of these actions. Your engagement fuels growth. Let's soar together.